Sometimes the big money moves don't always work out for some clubs, so today I'm going to take a look at my top 5 clubs in Europe that have been cursed with some unlucky transfers and little to show for it. Coming in at number 5, and it is Barcelona. Now, since the 2016 season, the club have spent a whopping 1.4 billion euros. Yes, 1.4 billion. Now, don't get me wrong, this team is one of the greatest teams and clubs across Europe. However, the fact that they've spent over €1 billion and still have not got a Champions League trophy is bound to raise some eyebrows. Now, of course, you can argue that the Catalan side have had their issues off the pitch and they've still managed to come out of it with 2 La Liga titles, 2 Copa del Rey and 2 Supercopas de España. However, when you look at the players they've brought in, they've not really hit the form that they should have done. And on the whole, a few of these players have been a little bit disappointing. Now, let's take a look at some of these players. First up, Ousmane Dembele for €130 million from Dortmund. Definitely not proved himself worthy of the price tag. Next, Philippe Coutinho for €145 million from Liverpool. Do I really need to explain this one? Then you've got Antoine Griezmann for €120 million from Atletico Madrid, arguably one of the most disappointing signings of recent times. And this isn't even mentioning the likes of Boateng, Vidal, these aging players that they seem to bring in. I could go on and on. It just seems like Barcelona have not had the best luck when it comes to bringing in these big name players to the club. However, with things at the top of the club changing, could it be that their luck will also change too? At number 4, it is West Ham, and despite spending almost €390 million, the only thing that's been consistent about the teams of late has been their flop signings. One example has to be Andre Ayew for €24.10 million from Swansea. He did have moments of greatness, and at the time he signed for a club record fee. However, he didn't really find his feet and ended up back at Swansea. In 2018, the Hammers saw the arrival of Andre Yarmolenko for €20 million, but he featured only 9 times in his first season and 23 times in his second season after some injuries and struggling to find consistency. Although he has improved, he still has not justified his price tag and is actually one of the highest paid players at the club on £115,000 a week. And of course, Felipe Anderson, who was the club's marquee signing for €38 million from Lazio. Whilst he managed to impress in his first season, he has struggled in his second season and he's only scored once in 25 appearances. He has really failed to make a mark and be a permanent fixture in the squad, and they're still actually trying to get rid of him now. And let's not forget one of their biggest signings of recent times in Sebastian Haller, who set them back €50 million. He was the 6th most expensive striker in the English Premier League, and although he has improved a little, he is really struggling to fulfil his potential. And then there was Jordan Hugill, who set them back just over €10 million. And I think that this was David Moyes' way of paying homage to his beloved Preston North End, as that is where the player came from. Now, he only actually played 22 minutes of competitive football for West Ham, and then they kind of discovered that he maybe wasn't that great and they shipped him off to Norwich ASAP. And finally, Pablo Fornals for €28 million from Villarreal. West Ham were desperate for some creativity, so he did seem to fit the bill. However, things haven't really taken off like expected, but there is still some time for him to maybe turn things around. Now, despite these disaster signings for ridiculous amounts of money, things have actually got off to a really good start this season for David Moyes and his team, thanks to the likes of Diop, Bowen and Souček. However, will they be able to keep this up? We will have to wait and see. Next up, and it is PSG. Now, I know people can argue that since the 2016-17 season, they have won over 10 trophies, and this does include 3 domestic titles. They are still without a Champions League trophy. They have spent over €750 million. And despite last season getting to the final, every season they seem to have some real trouble in the Champions League. And like I say, the fact that they are without this European trophy and they've spent all this money, can they really justify the spending? So considering this, spending €222 million on Neymar from Barcelona at the time was maybe a stroke of genius. However, due to his current injuries, season in, season out, and the fact that he's not really been able to be and play that role of a strong player that can help lead the team to glory, does leave you asking a few questions. And if we go even further back, there was the likes of Jesse from Real Madrid for €25 million back in 2016, a decent amount of money at the time. He ended up being a massive flop with 10 games and 1 goal in the league. Or how about Hatem Ben Arfa? Fair enough, he did arrive on a free, but he was not the best player. He struggled to find the back of the net, he did have some attitude problems, and he's allegedly still actually trying to sue PSG for not enough game time. Pair this with the likes of €40 million for Leandro Paredes and Icardi for €50 million, who hasn't completely lived up to expectation. It has not been plain sailing in transfer windows for PSG, and if they want to justify the amount of spending that they have done, they're going to need that Champions League trophy sooner rather than later. Coming in at number 2, it is Everton, who despite spending over €580 million, they have not actually won a piece of silverware since 1995. Yes, they have had a few brushes with some European competition, however along the way there have been some seriously disappointing signings. First up we have Yannick Bolasie, who cost the Toffees €28.9 million from Crystal Palace, and at the time was the club's second most expensive signing. Now this was such an unlucky move from Everton. He did start off good, but unfortunately he ruptured a cruciate ligament and he was out for quite a while. Since he's come back, he's only actually managed to make overall 32 appearances for the club, and he's really struggling to find form. In the same year, they brought in Morgan Schneiderlin for €23 million from Man United, and despite seeing him struggle at Old Trafford, they still brought him into Goodison Park, and as expected really, a bit of a waste of money. He's really struggled to make a mark on any game really. Now, let's not forget Davy Klaassen, who arrived from Ajax for €27 million. Now, he was the captain of Ajax, he'd played for Holland, everybody was so excited about the arrival of this player. Sadly, he couldn't adapt to the pace or intensity of the Premier League and departed after one poor season for almost half of what they paid for him. Also, back in the 2017-18 season, we saw the arrival of Sigurdsson for almost €50 million, and again, although he's had moments of greatness, he has really struggled. And also Jordan Pickford arrived that season from Sunderland for almost €30 million, and with Pickford it has just been error after error, mistake after mistake in net, and he is really struggling, making consistent mistakes in net leading to some severe errors. And recently we have seen the arrival of some great young talent, including Alex Iwobi for €30.4 million. Now I say great talent, he was deemed such an exciting young player, however he has really struggled with his form and only has 39 appearances and 3 goals. And Moise Kean, who arrived for €27.5 million from Juventus. On paper, a great signing, however he's now at PSG on loan, as he really did struggle at Goodison Park with only 4 goals in 37 appearances. However, times are changing at Goodison Park, and with the arrival of Carlo Ancelotti, James Rodriguez, Allen and Richarlison recently, things are certainly looking up for the Toffees. And finally, the biggest spenders with not much to show for it is my club Manchester United. Over €776 million down the drain and no major trophies. Thanks to Jose Mourinho, they did manage to get a Europa League, an EFL Cup and a Community Shield. However, since then it has been pretty dire. Let's take a look at some of those signings. First up, Eric Bailly for €38 million from Villarreal, a centre-back that we have barely seen on the pitch. He actually spends more time on the injury table than anywhere else. Next up, Paul Pogba. Now this one is up for debate. €105 million. He came back to Manchester United from Juventus, and people can argue with this one. On one hand, Paul Pogba is a phenomenal world-class talent. On the other hand, some people do criticise and say that he's not lived up to his full potential. However, people can also say that that's just because of the squad that he's had around him. Another player who may have blamed the players around him was Romelu Lukaku, who came to the club for over €80 million from Everton. Now, on paper, an absolute amazing signing, and it's great to see him doing so well in Italy now. However, this again was something that never really took off and was a big waste of money for Manchester United. Despite some of the goals that he did bring, all in all, bit of a disappointment. And of course, Harry Maguire for €87 million. Now, at the time, I can see why they did this one. However, he is really not living up to expectation. Last season, he did have some really great moments. However, the fact that he doesn't have a solid partner in defence is really not working out for him, and he is struggling. Also purchased last season was Bruno Fernandes and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, both for €55 million each. Now, Bruno Fernandes, not going to argue with that one. He is worth every single penny. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, you could also argue that as well for him. He has had some really great moments, although he's still got a little bit of development to do. And lastly, most recently, we have got Donny van de Beek for €39 million. euros from Ajax. Now, I'm not going to argue with the price tag. My only issue is that I don't really understand why Manchester United have bought him since they're not really playing him. It has been years of managerial changes, highs, lows, some bizarre signings, some signings that should have worked when you think about them on paper. Alexis Sanchez is a perfect example of that. However, Manchester United and transfers, it's just not really gone very well recently. So that is my top 5. Get involved in the comments, check out all the other content we've got here, and I will see you guys soon.